I'd like to welcome you to the Big Freaky International Hotel. I'd like to thank you for coming out. This is my first appearance first live appearance in 9 years. Thank you. Appeared dead a few times, but but I really like it, and I hope you do too. Yeah.
Elvis had a tremendous draw to him emotionally and physically, where you looked at him and you thought, that is probably about the best looking man I've ever seen, you know. He just had a charisma about him. He had a way of pulling you in. People call it Southern charm. He had it in spades.
Nobody commanded the stage any better than Elvis Presley.
I really didn't know why I was yelling so bad. I didn't realize that I was moving, my body was moving. It's a natural thing to me.
I was there seeing concerts in 55 and 56 and 57, the most exciting, raw, animalistic things I've ever seen. And of course that will always be my lifelong image of Elvis Presley.
Music was the mainstream of his life.
It was a fast-paced world around him.
There were times I looked at him and he looked very lonely. And I'd look at him and I think, he's not even where he wants to be right there. He's not feeling anything right now.
When I was a child, ladies and gentlemen, I was a dreamer. I read comic books and I was the hero of the comic book. I saw movies and I was the hero in the movie. So every dream that I ever dreamed has come true 100 times. These gentlemen over here, you see these type of people who care, they're dedicated. You realize that it's not possible that they might be building the kingdom. It's not too far-fetched from reality.
My name is Sonny West. I was 20 years old when I met Elvis in 1958. Elvis, Red, and myself grew up in housing projects, government housing projects, where you could only make so much amount of money and you lived there. My first impression when I met Elvis in 1958 was it was hard to believe that this was such a superstar. He was such a natural, good person, attentive, caring, a warm guy. Just when you talk to him, he just talked to you like my cousin Red talked to me or some of the other guys, and he just was, I don't know, there was something about him that just drew you in.
My name is Jerry Schilling. I met Elvis in 1954 at the age of 12 years old. Growing up in North Memphis, I went to the local park one day. It's called Dave Wells Community Center, Guthrie Park. There was a little school called Guthrie. And I saw this guy. It was Elvis Presley. That was it for me. Changed my whole life. I wanted to be like him. He was lovable, he was dangerous, everything a young kid would admire. I remember going home, saying a little prayer that night, saying, gosh, a real prayer, saying, I really wish he would be my friend.
My name is Marty, and I first went to work for Elvis when I was 24. Elvis was a bit of a loner back then. He had maybe 3 or 4 friends that lived in the same housing project he did, and primarily was shy, did not really come out of his shell until a couple of talent shows, and the girls started screaming him. I mean, he always liked girls. I mean, I think he had more girlfriends than he had guy friends. as far as work is concerned, responsibilities as far as work. Everybody knew what they had to do so that he could be happy and live his own life.
There really wasn't much that Elvis couldn't get if he really went after it, whether it was from Southern charm or just a strong conviction of saying, I'm going to do that and that's it. And that's what we always admired about him, but those things slipped away in the latter years. He didn't have the strong convictions. He didn't have, I'm going to get it done. Elvis was not only the king, he was the boss.
You became his friend. You lived like him. There was no class system. If push comes to shove, you work for Elvis, okay? But as Elvis once told me, you know, if you're successful, you make and do things a little bit better, nicer house, maybe an airplane or something, but it all boils down to friends, family, some things to look forward to, and some people to share it with. He's the only star I have ever met that looked like, acted like a special person, a star, before he had a hit record, before he did a movie. I've met a lot of those stars that movies and records and adulation and all those things kind of make you into a star. Elvis was born a star.
The first time that I appeared on stage, it was a charity thing in Memphis, in a place called the Shell. When I left the stage, they were yelling and screaming and so forth. I did 2 songs, and it scared me to death, man. I didn't know what I'd done. So the manager backstage, I said, what'd I do? He said, well, whatever it is, go back and do it again. So I went back out and did the same thing again.
When Elvis would arrive for these tours, the first years, it was ready. I mean, he was just enjoying it to the fullest. He was out in front of that public again and performing and doing what he does best, and that's sing his song.
He didn't want to know anything about business. He left all of his personal finances up to his father. Yeah. I'm not saying nothing against Mr. Presley. He couldn't handle it. I said to Elvis one day, Elvis, you know there's a way that you can have your money work for you. So you don't have to do all this stuff. He said, well, go tell Daddy. Well, I go out in the office and I tell Mr. Presley, I said, Elvis wanted me to say something to you about, possibly letting his money work for him. And he said, mind your own damn business.
A controversial figure in the eyes of many, Colonel Tom Parker was Elvis's manager, and without a doubt, was a force to be reckoned with.
I like to live up to my reputation of being a nice guy. This is it, folks.
How did you first meet Tom Parker?
Well, when I was with Bob Neal was my manager. The Colonel used to take shows out on the road. He'd hire me for an extra added single. Mm-hmm. And he undoubtedly liked the performance that we did, so we decided to start working together. Him as my manager.
Did you pick Parker, or did Parker come for you?
Well, we more or less picked each other.
Presley was a star from the first day he ever started going into show business. I think anyone could have helped him that knows something about show business. I think my experience and in a small way handling his future with making contracts where perhaps someone would offer a certain amount of money and I thought this artist was worth more and I held out for my price. I've lost some deals, but I gained some others by waiting.
Colonel, bring these contracts. There'll be a stack of contracts this high. And Elvis signed them. I said, what the hell are you doing? He said, well, Colonel's already looked them over. I said, good Lord. He never looked at a contract. He said, where'd I sign? And walk away. And I'm going, man, you ought not do that. You know, he said, don't tell me about business tomorrow. You don't know anything about it. I said, well, okay. You know, all this stuff would swirl around him. And he didn't want anything to do with it.
Elvis worked so hard from 54 to the time he went into the Army, and everything was going well too. Colonel had set up things great. Colonel had made it possible in Elvis's mind that he had a career when he came back from the Army. Normally, an entertainer went in the Army, the career is over. Colonel kept movies being released, songs out, and he had these long-term contracts, which looked really good in the beginning. But Elvis had no script approval, music approval, none of these things. The machinery was set. All the people, William Morris Agency, RCA, the studios, for a few years now, they had gotten all their direction, all their deals was through Colonel Parker. And Elvis doesn't even like to be in those kind of meetings. And Colonel didn't understand the creativity aspect. Colonel would go, his wife was named Marie. Hey, Marie, can't hear Elvis singing for all those voices and all that stuff. And then I'd go home, and Elvis would get the record, and he would compare it with the acetate that he left the recording session with, and all the mix was different. It would be like if Michelangelo was giving the Pope paintings, and the Pope had these people came in, let's take a few clouds out here, let's make the blue blue.
Elvis liked to have his friends and buddies around him. He enjoyed their company, and it made him comfortable, and he was basically a very shy person until he got to know you. So once he got comfortable around you, he'd rather have those people around him instead of strangers.
While in Germany, during his stint in the Army, Elvis happened to meet a certain admirer.
The first time he met Priscilla, I happened to be at the house that evening when she was introduced to him. When she walked in the door, I mean, very pretty young lady, but I didn't know how old she was at the time, and I figured she was about 16, but at the time she was 14, I find out later.
He liked young girls. He thought if they got 18, they were ready for Social Security. I said, listen, you know, you better get some keys. And he said, what do we need keys for? I said, to the fucking jail cell. They're going to put our ass in for you dating a 14-year-old girl. We ain't gonna be...
But she was very mature, very quiet at first, because naturally walked in the room with all these guys in there. And then Elvis, you know, I mean, that's a pretty tough situation to be in.
Elvis, there have been a lot of rumors about your love life. Did you meet anyone special in Germany?
There was a little girl that I was seeing quite often over there that her father was in the Air Force, and actually they only got over there about 2 months before I left. I was seeing her, and she was at the airport when I left. And there were some pictures made of her. The stories came out, the girl he left behind, and all that. It wasn't like that. I mean, I had to be careful when I answer a question like that.
Elvis has a report that you like the Army so much that you wanted to write a book about it. Do you ever think of re-enlisting?
No, sir, I never thought of. I never thought of re-enlisting, but maybe someday I will write a book about my experiences in the Army. You know.
Have 2 years of sobering Army life changed your mind about rock and roll?
Sobering Army life. No, it hasn't. It hasn't changed my mind, because I was in tanks for a long time, you see, and they rock and roll quite a bit.
Under strict conditions from her parents, Priscilla was allowed to make short visits to see Elvis during 1962, subsequently moving in with the King of Rock and Roll at Graceland in March 1963.
He had been back from the Army 4 years. He did 2 or 3, good movies when he came back. But the movies were getting weaker and weaker, and the soundtracks were getting, in some cases, more ridiculous and more ridiculous.
Elvis's meteoric ascent to fame continued throughout the 60s. Naturally, stuck in long-term contracts and accompanied by his unwavering hunger to become a dramatic actor, Elvis spent time in Hollywood building his acting career.
In the movie years, the drugs were in control. The sleeping pills and the uppers.
And he said, I want to be sure, we stay up all night. We drive all night. I know you're not used to it, and I want you to, keep up as far as your attitude is concerned. So he said, I want to show you something. So out of his pocket came a little blue velvet case, a jewelry box. He said, open it up. Well, I opened it up, and it was just chock full of pills of every color you can think of. And I said, good God, what is this? And he said, here, let me give you a few, and this will help you stay awake and be in a good mood. I said, okay. So he picked out about 4 of them, and he said, here, don't take them all at once, just take them every couple of hours. I stayed up for 3 days. And to be quite honest with you, it gives you one hell of a good feeling. So I kept taking them. I took them for 15 years. When you start taking the uppers, which is what they were, in order to go to sleep, you need to start taking sleeping pills. So it gets to be a vicious circle. And where today 1 will work, tomorrow you need 2, and the next day you need 3, and then the next day you need 4. And after 15 years, it gets pretty vicious.
I couldn't take them every day. Not to be the goody-goody, but I just couldn't take that pill because I knew what it was going to do to me. Make my mouth dry, it was just going to make me wired all day, and I just didn't want to do it. But I had to take them sometimes because he would stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and we get up at 5 to go on location. I learned from the very start, I sleep when he sleeps. We used to have a thing, in fact, on Paramount, on GI Blues, they had a club scene in there, and he'd kept us up late, and I just couldn't stay awake, and I hadn't taken anything. So I went over to a dead set and got into a booth there in the nightclub set, and they were shooting on another one, and laid down on the booth to get some sleep. And one of the crew guys up on the catwalk just pointed me out to Elvis. I found out later, he pointed me out. Said, like that. And Elvis came around when he got through with his business. He came around and looked for me. And he saw me through there because there was a couple of tables stacked up, and I had to kind of put a little camouflage so I couldn't be seen easy. Oh, man. He threw that table and chair, and I woke up straight up. He said, damn you, Sonny, I told you you sleep when I sleep. I said, I'm up, boss. I just took a break,
I'd like to get married. I'd like to have a family. It's a normal thing to do. I mean, who wants to grow old and be alone, you know what I mean? To find that one girl, it's a thing that you can't rush. A lot of people think if they're not married by a certain age that they're losing out. For me, I have to be completely sure. I have to be able to trust them completely. I look for a lot of things now that I used to wouldn't have looked for, you know, a sense of humor, their taste for different things, just a lot of things. Their understanding of me, my way of thinking. It takes a while. I mean, it takes a while to find someone or to get to trust somebody.
And he told me,
Yeah.
I don't want to get married, but I'm being forced to.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Elvis's lifespan with a woman was anywhere from 2 to 4 years.
I need to interject. It wasn't because he didn't love her.
No,
he did love
he
her.
cared
He didn't
about
want to
her.
get
Sure he
married
did.
because he shouldn't have been married. He
No.
didn't want to marry.
No, I don't
her.
think, yeah.
That's the key.
February 1st, 1968, saw an expansion of the Presley family. Priscilla gave birth to Elvis's only child, a daughter named Lisa Marie. The King portrayed his final acting role in 1969, after starring in 30 feature films. He looked to reignite his music career, having not performed publicly for over 7 years. The King was making a comeback.
I just made a movie of the last tour that I did. It's the first live concert that we ever filmed, so that's my next project that's coming out. I just missed it. I missed the live audience. So just as soon as I got out of the movie contracts, I started to do live performances again.
Elvis's electrifying live performances took him to Sin City, where his manager, Tom Parker, secured a residency at the International Hotel.
I'd like to welcome you to the Big Freaky International Hotel. I'd like to thank you for coming out. This is my first appearance and first live appearance in 9 years. Thank you. Appeared dead a few times, but this is. But I really like it, and I hope you do too. Yeah.
From 67 through 71, he was dynamite.
72, he started falling apart.
Yeah.
And the greatest pictures that were taken of Elvis was in those years, where he looked so phenomenal.
165,
He was so,
170.
he was absolutely scary looking. He was so handsome. He was just deadly.
His spirits were up at that time, too. He was very high
and he was
spirited.
happy about being in Vegas. That was a thrill. But he was stuck with it because Colonel had locked the deal. He didn't like the idea of doing, 2 shows a night, sometimes 3, 7 days a week, and it bothered him. And it festered and festered and festered until the very end. He hated it so bad he wouldn't do it.
We leave the studio and nobody can sleep for hours. It takes at least 4 or 5 hours to even begin to unwind. And we usually wind up, doing this type of stuff.
There seems to be a kind of like a relationship going on stage. It's like everybody is a friend of everybody else on stage. And that's something very rare.
I think it's because we enjoy it, and we constantly enjoy it, which means that we do 2 shows a night for 5 weeks, but we never let it get old. Every song is like we do it for the first time, and that's one of the secrets,
Well, his behavior really changed a bit as the 70s went on. Primarily, I think, out of boredom, and he needed a change, and the more pills he took, it's just a fact of life. The more pills he took, that didn't help.
Plus the threats, on his life.
That didn't help.
That didn't help
The
at all,
threats.
so.
I mean, it was a combination
the
of
life that he
things.
lived, paranoia is like, it's unexplainable at times. And he really, he just got terribly insecure.
In 1969, when Charles Manson killed Sharon Tate and all those people up there, remember? Scared him to death. He armed every one of us. That's when it became very paranoid. And then we get the death threat in Las Vegas. And he has this picture of Manson in that courtroom, and he's picturing someone like that sitting in a courtroom that their claim to fame was they had shot and killed Elvis Presley. And he took Jerry and Red and myself, who were doing the security main at that time, and said, tearfully, if it happens, I want you to get to him first. I don't deserve to be shot or killed by anybody. And then he told us what he wanted us to do to him. Most of the time, when we toured, I was with Colonel Parker, the advance team. I went in with him and set up the security for the hotels. We set up that security so good. The paper said the Secret Service could take security lessons from Elvis Presley security because they said we knew he was going to be here, we never could find him. When the death threats first started happening, they just kind of snowballed. We try to keep them quiet. Yeah. Because we don't want the copycats, okay? So we kept these things quiet, and it worked. We had bomb threats. Most people will say, we had a bomb threat at the show, and all of a sudden the paper and people, we kept it quiet because we didn't want to have a bomb threat at every venue we played because we had one at the last one. So someone's going to call in another one at the next one. So we kept a lot of this quiet, just as we kept a lot of things about us and Elvis quiet over the years. Nobody could get things from us, remember?
We were a conspiracy of silence, and we kept it that way. That's the way. I mean, nobody really pierced our veil. It just didn't happen.
I'd like to say something right here. Those of you who saw the morning paper, or the evening paper, whatever it was, they gave me they gave us a fantastic write-up. Now they did, except they said I had a paunch here, and I want to tell you something. I got the damn paunch. I wore a bulletproof vest on stage. True. You know, in case some fool decides to take a 22 and blow my belly button off.
We used to, as an example, even in the very early 60s, we used to go snake hunting. There was this lake near Graceland where we'd take shotguns. And he'd kill the snakes. And one time, he almost shot Joe Esposito, because Joe, not knowing about snakes, picked one up by the tail, and he didn't know what kind of snake it was. Elvis took aim and shot the snake's head off while Joe was holding it in his hand. I'm glad it wasn't me. But he always had that fondness, but it got even more when he started putting it in terms of protection. We used to joke because he used to have a gun here, and a gun here, and a gun here, and a gun in his boot, and a gun in his back, and he'd just go out to go to the movies. Plus, some of us had guns. You know, we were all armed because he didn't want to take any chances.
Vegas provided countless temptations for Elvis, but it was Colonel Parker that would fall to the seduction of the bright lights of Sin City.
Colonel Parker probably was one of the most degenerate gamblers I've ever known in my life. In Nevada, they used to say his money's not worth anything. He played roulette and would put chips on every number. He would play craps and bet the horn, the center. The great precipitation of problems with Elvis and the Colonel was over his gambling. And Elvis believed toward the end, that the reason he was playing the hotels was trying to pay off the Colonel's debts.
When we were playing Vegas, and I got Elvis downstairs for the early show, and I had to go back up to the suite, so instead of going through the back corridors, I went out the front and went through the casino, and Colonel was at a roulette table there, and my wife was pregnant. And Colonel said, "Sonny, give me a number." And I said, "Well, my child is due on the 24th of September, so 24. So he put down a couple of chips on 24. George Parkhill put about 10 down. It hit. Straight up. Colonel said, "Why didn't you tell me you was real sure about that number?"
Yeah. One night I was up about, I think I was up $50,000, $60,000. I was running the crap table crazy, and he came up and took my money and put it on Don't Pass.
You threw a 7.
And I threw a 7 and lost it all. One pop. And I wanted to throw up, but I couldn't. And I said, you know, Jesus God, I said, I've worked my butt off here. I said, he said, how much did you start off with? I said, I started off with $2,000. So he counted out $2,000 and gave it to me. He said, now you're even. And I went, God almighty.
Tell the tale, but it's take a walk down lonely street to
I got sick one night last week and I had a temperature of about 102.
Ironically, the first day I went to work for him, in '64, he had taken too much sleep medication. And when I was first getting to Graceland, Vernon was walking down the steps with Elvis with a breathing thing on. He was having a hard time breathing, and when he saw me, he kind of snapped out of it. And brilliantly he said, and we're in Memphis, he goes, and he took the breathing thing off because he didn't want me to see him in a compromising situation. He said, kind of winked at me and said, boy, this California air will get to you. And it was never mentioned again. I'd only seen Elvis as this god, whether we were playing football or fast-witted, all this stuff. And here's being helped down the stairs with a breathing thing. I've seen him way overweight, almost between 5 movies. It didn't just happen in 1977 or 76. Always came back. And that was that was the part of the inner circle. You could gain 30 pounds and go to movies and nobody knew about it because it was, you know, wasn't going to get to the press. It wasn't, you know, nobody was going to take pictures, anything like that. When you're in the situation, it's so much easier to look back or to question than when you're living it. And don't forget, when you're in the situation, it's not like all of us were not staying up late at night, not taking a sleeping pill to go to sleep. It's not like we were these straight guys with this one freak over here. It wasn't that way. We were all in the boat together in various levels.
The kind of pills that we were taking in that year and a couple of years before that were the sleeping pills and the downers and the pain pills. And those things are the opposite of uppers. You know, they're the opposite of speed that bring you up. These things, I mean, they brought you down. I mean, I look back now and I know that I used to sit there with a sour look on my face, like I was mad, sad, or whatever you want to call it. And I know that didn't help the atmosphere, his atmosphere, or anybody else's atmosphere or mine. But that had to play a big part, in my opinion, of the way he was.
These were prescription drugs. Now, the doctor's writing them for him. He's abusing them, but they're not illegal drugs in his mind. But he wants to stop the people out on the street getting heroin and cocaine to young people and trying to influence them to get on to drugs and things of that nature. So that's what it was in his mind. As intelligent as Elvis was in so many ways, he was naive in thinking that they were separate issues there, because they really wasn't.
I think the main thing about the situation with all the drug stuff that he was taking is the way it affected us. Everybody knows how it affected him, but it just totally terrorized us. Every day the conversations would start with this and end with this, and it became an endless battle within the group to somehow outwit him. Remember that?
Yes.
We'd go to Aspen, we'd go to Snowmass, we would go Hawaii, anywhere, just to sort of get him out of rhythm. And if we got him out of rhythm, he would be straight and he would be fun. But then, like anybody, he would slip into it. So what we did is we really sort of majored everything we had and knew at the time to prevent it. And we did the best we could. And then he would fire you and you couldn't do any good. But if you hung in there, you could possibly keep him alive another day.
Everyone knew that if they can't be around him, he's going to fire everybody.
Yeah,
you couldn't do anything.
And then you can't help.
I think Elvis has given up on some of his dreams at this particular point. I think he's getting tired. I think he's getting bored. I think there are new people coming around that probably thinks that's the norm. But for us that really knew Elvis most of his life, this was not the norm for him.
I would go into like just really feeling horribly sad. But I was just mad. I stayed mad. I just could not believe that he did that to himself. I just could not believe it. I mean, Elvis, he took the same load on an empty stomach that he took when he was eating. So it went to his system faster.
And, you know, he was losing a little of his patience. There's no way of getting around the fact that the drugs were affecting him, not just physically. It's hard for me to admit to that, but I think we do more injustice by not admitting it.
The worst thing that Elvis did, and he got me upset, got Sonny upset, is he would use our names on prescriptions.
An investigative reporter for 2020 found that he had written 10,000 tablets or medication, not individual, I'm talking about the total amount of pills and everything, 10,000 in 1 year's time. And of course he said, well, some of the guys shared in those. Elvis didn't share his drugs with you, man. I mean, he might give you a Percodan if you hurt yourself or something like that, but he's not giving it to you on a basis where you can just go away.
Elvis, wanting to do great, was real clear, and there's a doctor in Las Vegas sending him exactly the reason why he was in the hospital. And we can say he had a good career, we can say this, we can say that, but the guy's dead. He shouldn't be gone today, and he's been gone 25 years. Of course I'm angry, you know? If I really think about it, I'm extremely angry. Here's a guy that helped everybody else. If you were sick, not just with money, though. He helped you talk things through, whatever else. I don't think he got the reciprocal from his friends.
I don't want anybody that's your friend to go through that. And I think the horrendous part of it is that we could not stop it. I think to the day I die, that'll be one of my burdens. And you know, we tried and we tried, but we couldn't. He was his own worst enemy.
Unhappy with his marriage to Priscilla, Elvis filed for divorce at the beginning of 1973. Elvis's mental and physical health began to deteriorate, stuck in a vicious cycle of prescription drug addiction while coming to terms with a divorce. This fueled allegations of recreational drug use from the press.
In this day and time, you can't even get sick. You are strung out. Oh, by God, I'll tell you something, friend. I have never been strung out in my life, except on music. When I got sick here in the hotel, I got sick here that one night. I had 102 temperature. They wouldn't let me perform. From 3 different sources, I heard I was strung out on heroin. I swear to God, hotel employees, Jack, bellboys, freaks that carry your luggage up to the room, people working around, you know, talking, maids. And I was sick. I was, you know, had a doctor, had the flu, and I got over one day. But all across this town, I was strung out. So I told him earlier, and don't you get offended, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to somebody else. If I find or hear the individual that has said that about me, I'm gonna break your goddamn neck, you son of a bitch. That is dangerous. That is damaging to myself, to my little daughter, to my father, to my friends, my doctor, to everybody, my relationship with you, my relationship with up here on the stage. It is dangerous. I will pull your goddamn tongue out by the roots.
Elvis had a temper. He had a bad temper. His mother had one, and I think he got that from her, but that's about the only quality that he got from her that wasn't good, because everything else about her was giving and warm and sharing. His temper was like a black cloud when it came in full blown, buddy. It was a Category 5 tornado, okay? It just covered all the area around, the whole room, the whole atmosphere. And you didn't know until you knew who it was about that had got him that way, what thoughts, who he was thinking about that got him this, or who had done something. His temper came out several times at me during the years that I worked for him. Some of us talked it over one day about how bad the situation was going with Elvis. And we discussed it with some of the guys that were getting it to him in a way that, don't do it anymore, you're going to be hurt. And we're going to turn your doctor friends in to the medical association. Well, it dried up for a while. The guys were scared of us, the ones of us that were going to do something to him physically. Elvis finally said, what is going on? How come I'm not getting this or that? And finally, Ricky, his brother, his stepbrother, told him what was going on, that we had threatened them. Elvis called us in on the carpet. He told us we better stay out of his business. It was none of our business. He was in charge. He knew what he was doing. He needed it right now. He was asked, well, what happened to the good old days when you didn't need it? And he said, there are no more good old days. So he said, if you don't stop it, you're going to be looking for other jobs. We didn't stop it. 3 or 4 months later, we were fired by his order through his father. He was told, we know from Linda Thompson, she was present. Elvis told his dad to give us enough money to live on for 2 or 3 months because he was going to hire us back. The amount mentioned was $5,000. He said, I've just got to show him I'm still the boss. Well, instead of his dad doing that, he called us in on the phone. He gave us 3 days' notice and 1 week's pay and said goodbye. Oh, I broke down and cried. I was emotionally knocked on my ass. I just couldn't believe it, what I had committed for him and for him to do this. I had been fired and talked about being fired over the years, but there was something about this one because of the reason. Every other time it was like over a girl. It really was.
Owing to his increasing dependency upon prescription drugs, an ailing Elvis was once again admitted to hospital in 1975.
If you'll remember correctly, in late '74, whatever, up at College Park, Maryland, he got out of that limousine. I helped him out like I always do at the back of the hotel. His hair was unkempt. It was always done before it was unkempt. He didn't have a hat or one of those hats or anything on it. And I thought, what in the world? He said, hey, Sonny, very slurred. And I thought, oh, boy. We got upstairs. I asked the guys what was going on. They told me. We went up to the security room and we said a circle prayer for Elvis because I was so scared of what was happening.
That episode toward the end of his life was the most terrorizing thing we'd all gone through. All the fun that we had had 20 years before was gone, and it became joyless. It became moments of great fun followed by continual panic.
In 1975, what I had been seeing a little bit of the previous year or so was getting worse, and I was very concerned about his health. And it wasn't like it had been before when he was taking the uppers and the sleeping pills. When he started experimenting with the, the down stuff, that's when we started getting concerned.
Unable to shake his addiction, the king was rushed to hospital for a 3rd time in 1977.
One time we were in the bedroom talking, and he said, Lamar, he said, I'm probably standing over your grave when they put you in the ground. I said, well, let me preface what you're saying here with something of mine. I said, for some strange reason, I can never see you as an old man. And I never could. I used to try to, and I never could. And I always wondered what was that problem. And the problem, I think, was that I saw what all was going on.
I am very upset today how people think of us
Yeah.
And it bothers me to no end. Sometimes I
they blame
grab
us
them
for
and
everything.
shake them and say, listen,
Yeah.
you idiot, we did everything we could. You keep talking about why didn't people around him do more? We
They
did.
said
We got
that you
fired.
were
We got
friends. Yeah,
dismissed.
you were
we
you know
were his
what?
friends. Yeah, we were his friends. That's why we went to the wall for him every time. And if I could have done anything more that I think of Lamar, I would have done it. I sleep at night because I know I made my move. I made my move to do what I could to get him off. And it didn't work. And I got fired for it.
I said, you cannot keep like you're going. You're going to die. I said, you are on the verge of dying. When I looked at him, and he looked back at me and he said, let me tell you something. This is how his mind worked. He said, I'll be there when they lower your big ass into the ground.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you won't. And he got mad, and he said, if you bring this up again, he said, I'll drop kick your ass to Cleveland. I said, Elvis, I don't have to bring it up. People see it.
I said, flip, flop, and fly. I don't care if I die. I said, flip, flop, and fly. I don't care if I die. Don't ever leave me. Don't ever say goodbye.
I never thought he was going to live. You know, I kept saying, I said, guys, this guy is not going to make it. You remember, I used to tell Colonel, and I'd tell Billy. Remember, we stood down. I said, that guy ain't going to make it. I said, you remember? I said, there's no way a person can put himself through what he's putting himself through and make it. I thought that he had so much more to offer. I mean, this man was so multi-talented. You know, he was a guy who never had acting school and was turning into a really good actor, I thought. And he was just a lot of good songs left in him. Could sing his butt off.
When I used to see him on stage performing in the manner that he started performing there at the end, where he wanted to do the best show he could, but with what he was,
Nothing left.
where he was at, he was really burning, and the light was getting dimmer. But when I see or think of him at that time, Lamar, and then I remember when I first met him, first time I saw him live in person at Tech High School when he sang a few songs, just him and his guitar at lunchtime over there. Saw him at the Tucson Rodeo Grounds when y'all came. This was with the group, remember? So I
remember
you
we
were
played
there in
Tucson,
Tucson, the rodeo grounds. And then when I met him up close and personal, when I was introduced to him by my cousin Red, who brought me in to the group, I couldn't believe it was Elvis Presley.
Look, all things change.
Could not believe it.
I mean, all things regardless. I mean, Sinatra, you know, go down the list. I mean, there's very few. I give Tom Jones a lot of credit for keeping himself in good health.
Mm-hmm.
God only knows, I don't know how he did. But he has
Worked
done
out
it
every day.
Yeah, he worked out, and I think he's really, you know, and it's a compliment to him. Elvis did the complete opposite.
I could not believe how he deteriorated in the year I was gone. When I saw the CBS special, I was shocked and I was pissed. And I called Colonel Parker one of the few times I ever did on a negative. How could you let him? I called him and I went and met with him. How could you let him be on camera like that? And he said, well, you're a manager, because I managed the Beach Boys at this time. You're a manager. You have to give the artist offers. I said, how could you? He said, I put an offer out there that was ridiculous. And CBS came back with it. And I took it to Elvis, and he wanted to do it. The point is that he wasn't in great shape when I left, but he certainly wasn't. When I saw that, yeah, the man looked like he was going to die.
Goes by so slowly, and time can do so much. Are you still mine? I need your love. I need your love.
What's going through your mind is that, did I do enough? Can I do any more? Can he hold together? It's like when I called him from L.A. when we were going to do that last tour. And I said, you just need to shut it down. I said, fuck the tour. I said, cut it off let's just, you know, I said, let's just cancel this tour out. And he said, Lamar, I've got a payroll. Which, you know, when you say that, you go, well, he's right. But at the same time, I told him, I said, listen, I said, you got 2 or 3 guys around here that'll go to Hawaii with you. And I said, we'll hang out and you just, you know, and you can get yourself back together again. He said, let's talk about that after this tour's over. It sounds like a good idea. He didn't make it.
Interrupting with a bulletin just in from Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis Presley may be dead. An unconfirmed wire service report says the 42-year-old singer was found unconscious in his Graceland mansion in Memphis, rushed to a local hospital where efforts to revive him reportedly were futile.
I thought he had no right to die. I thought he had no right to die at that age. I think that he left too much on the table. If anybody ever left too much on the table, Elvis did.
I was doing an interview, and he was already lying there dead. Of course, none of us knew it. I was out in California. And I was doing an interview with Bob Green, I think his name is, with the Chicago paper. And he asked me at the end of the interview, and we were talking about what kind of shape he was in and how he was going downhill. And he asked me, so it wouldn't surprise you at all then to pick up a paper someday and it's saying Elvis Presley had died? And I said, no. I said it wouldn't, but it also would, because it's almost like he's immortal, but when you come down to the truth of the situation, yeah. Like I said, it was a double-edged sword. I thought he was immortal. I mean, every time something happened like an angel, you know, his guardian angel pulled him out of it. So I had that feeling, but at the same time, Billy, what I saw in '76, it scared me to death.
And he died by himself.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me fucking mad.
Yeah.
That makes me mad. He died by himself. See,
and the cause of death is cardiac arrhythmia due to undetermined causes. Now, what this means is that there are several cardiovascular diseases present, which include a history of mild hypertension, which was under pretty good control, and some coronary artery disease. Now, these 2 diseases may have been responsible for this cardiac arrhythmia.
It's almost like predestination. It was like he was, I've always said that Elvis was like a artillery shell. They loaded him up, fired him, and he fell out of the ark. And just it went into the ground and blew up. There's not a day that goes by I don't think about him. I have dreams about him. I think in any other part of this business, if you look at it, I mean, he was responsible for so much, and yet when he died, he took so little with him. And I think that that's sad. He didn't have the chance to really enjoy what he could enjoy. What I had with him, and what all of us had with him, nobody has that in a lifetime.
Well, like brothers, and he was the guy that held us together.
We're family. No matter what we go through, we're all there for each other. And if Elvis did not do anything in this world, he forged a friendship and a family that lingers to this day.
Times I'd go over to him. I say, hey, boss. Hey, Sonny. About ready to go? Yeah, let's go. Get him out of that. He wasn't enjoying it. I apologize. I get emotional. Just rough.